If you've checked the news lately, you've probably seen some terrifying headlines. Stuff claiming Social Security is running out, going broke, or just disappearing entirely. Welcome to Lucidly-Money. Now, look, this is a topic that causes a massive amount of anxiety for millions of Americans who rely on this program. But what does the actual math say? Well, today we're going to push past all of the panic and completely demystify the Social Security entitlement cliff. Okay, let's dive into this by confronting the single most common panic-inducing myth out there. The big question on everyone's mind is Social Security going bankrupt? Well, the short answer is no, not even close. At least not in the way a private company goes bankrupt. You know, this is actually one of the most persistent misunderstandings in American public finance. A federal entitlement program backed by dedicated ongoing tax revenues physically can't just run out of money and close its doors. The whole program is still supported by the taxes of roughly 185 million active workers right now. So as long as Americans are working and paying payroll taxes, money is continuously entering the system. So if it's not going bankrupt, if it's not running out of money, what exactly is happening? The technical term we really need to focus on here is depletion. Now, depletion doesn't mean the bank account drops to absolute zero and your benefits just stop entirely. Rather, it refers to the exact moment the program's accumulated trust fund reserves are completely exhausted. When those reserves hit zero, Social Security triggers an automatic transition into a pure pay-as-you-go funding model. To really grasp what this means for your actual retirement check, we need to look at how this giant machine is actually built. Basically, we have two completely distinct pillars of the Social Security funding. On one side, you have the trust fund reserves. Think of this as the program's massive savings account, built up from past years when the program ran a big surplus. On the other side, you've got PIGO. This represents the continuous, contemporaneous cash flow coming in from current workers' payroll taxes every pay period. Now here's the catch. Right now, Social Security costs more to run than it brings in from those current payroll taxes alone. So to make up the difference and pay full scheduled benefits, the program has been dipping into that savings account. The cliff everyone is so worried about, that's literally just the day the savings account is finally empty. Now what becomes genuinely fascinating is that we've actually been here before. We've faced an almost identical imminent trust fund crisis back in the late 1970s and early 80s. But then the 1983 Greenspan Commission brought lawmakers together to negotiate reforms. We're talking about raising the retirement age, adjusting payroll taxes, the whole shebang. And those very reforms are exactly what generated the massive annual surpluses that built up the trillions of dollars in trust fund reserves we've been happily living off for the past decade. It's just a really powerful reminder that the system is designed to be tweaked and adjusted over time. Look at 2010. The program reached a real tipping point where its costs began to exceed its non-interest income. Then, by 2021, the math tightened even further, and total costs began to exceed total income. Now that's even including the interest earned on the reserves. That was the year the government officially started drawing down its $2.7 trillion in accumulated savings just to cover the shortfall. And you guessed it, that steady draw down puts us in a direct, unavoidable path to our target depletion year, 2032. Specifically, the fourth quarter of 2032. According to the 2026 Trustees Report, this is the official projected depletion deadline for the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, or OASI. This is the specific fund that actually pays your retirement and survivor benefits. Now, you might hear a slightly different date tossed around like 2034 or 2035. That happens if analysts combine this retirement fund with the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, which actually is in a much better financial shape. But under current law, those two funds are completely separate. So without an act of Congress to merge them or inject new funds, late 2032 is the hard date we really need to prepare for. So the absolute crucial point is this. What happens the actual day after depletion in 2032? Well, if Congress does absolutely nothing, the law dictates that the program can only pay what it takes in, and the incoming payroll taxes at the time. They'll only be enough to cover 78% of scheduled benefits. Because Social Security has absolute zero legal authority to just borrow money to cover the gap, it forces an automatic across-the-board benefit cut of about 22%. So this doesn't mean checks are going to stop entirely. Again, it's not going bankrupt, but they would instantly drop to just 78% of what you were originally promised. Let's translate those giant macroeconomic percentages into real personal impact. In Connecticut, that's an average cut of about $556 a month. New Jersey, $554. Maryland, $541. And that is well over $6,000 a year just disappearing from a retiree's budget. For the roughly 40% of retirees who depend on Social Security for the entirety of their income, a sudden drop like this would be completely devastating. And this brilliantly illustrates the next big question. Exactly why is the trust fund draining so much faster than we originally expected? Well, it's a crazy combination of deep demographic shifts and recent legislative changes. On the demographic side, we've got a plunging fertility rate dropping to roughly 1.6 births per woman. That simply means fewer young workers are paying into the system. At the same time, the massive baby boomer generation is retiring, and they're living longer, drawing benefits for a much longer period. Then add to that recent 2025 legislation, things like the repeal of the windfall elimination provision, and the government pension offset, which increase payouts for certain public workers. It's basically a perfect storm for higher outflows and constrained inflows. So what does this all mean? How do we actually fix it? The Congressional Budget Office and the program's actuaries have outlined several mathematical levers we can pull to store solvency. 1. Increasing revenue and reducing benefits. On the revenue side, Congress could raise the combined payroll tax from the current 12.4% to roughly 16.8%. Or they could increase the taxable maximum to cover way more of the earnings of high-income workers. On the benefit reduction side, options include adjusting the payout formula known as the PII bend points so high earners receive a bit less for charging how cost of living adjustments are calculated by using the change CPI. That was a rough one to get through, guys. I am sorry. That's a different inflation metric that would slightly slow the growth of initial benefits over time. Most experts agree that a balanced approach utilizing a mix of all of these levers is probably going to be required. But listen, here's the most vital takeaway from all of this data. The compounding cost of an inaction right now. If Congress enacts reforms today, right now the changes can be phased in gradually, spreading the burden out across multiple generations. It's manageable. However, every single year lawmakers wait, the math gets significantly more unforgiving. Delaying reform until that 2032 depletion date is right on our doorstep. If this happens, that's going to force the government to use much more drastic, abrupt, and honestly disruptive levers to balance the books. Which brings us right back to you, to me, to us. We've uncovered the reality of the math today. We know the system isn't just magically vanishing into thin air, but a 22% reduction in benefits is a very real default if this political gridlock persists. So my final question to you is this. How are you stress testing your own retirement plan against the 2032 benefit cut? Seriously, have you run your personal numbers assuming you might only receive 80% of your scheduled benefits? By really understanding the mechanics of this program, you can proactively adjust your savings rate, your asset allocations, and your timeline today. That empowers you to navigate whatever the future of Social Security holds. Thanks so much for joining me and learning just a little bit more about Social Security today. To keep learning with Lucidly-Money, watch the video that popped up on the screen just for you.